Hello, and welcome to the Hindus Parley podcast. I am your host, Mandira, Moddie, and I will be moderating this discussion today. The media and public discourse following the recent military tensions between India and Pakistan after the Pahalgam terrorist attack has highlighted the erosion of the public's trust in the media. Many media outlets published sensational stories and published misinformation and disinformation, highlighting unverified claims and disseminating fake pictures and videos. While some news outlets provided accurate information and reported responsibly, much of this was lost in a sea of misinformation, magnified many-fold thanks to social media. Hypermasculine Jingoism only aggravated the larger public response to the conflict. The question we are asking today is how can we sift fact from fiction during a conflict when national security issues are at stake? To discuss this, we have with us senior journalist Nirupama Subramaniam and Pratik Sinha, editor and co founder of Alt News. Thank you, Nirupama and Pratik, for being with us today on Parley.
Thank you, Mandira.
Nirupama, can we start with you? Could you tell us, are there any rules regarding reporting during times of military conflict? Are there national security implications that need to be considered? And how do we balance this versus the public's right to know?
Mandira, unfortunately, I think media houses in India have not framed rules for coverage of conflict. And this is particularly sad considering that, India has had so many military conflicts in its history of 75 years. They've been with Pakistan, and then there's been a big conflict with China in 62, a war with China in 62 and half, mini kind of military escalation twice in the last decade, once at Doklam and the other in Ladakh. And plus, we've had so many internal conflicts also, Maoist insurgencies in many states, and secessionist movements in the Northeast, and the insurgency in Kashmir, which of course has elements of a war because of the cross border nature of the violence. But we don't have rules, particularly for conflict coverage. The only rules we have, Mandira, are the basic rules for all journalism, I think. That you understand that your responsibility is to inform the public. I mean, to inform either your viewers or your readers, that you have to be accurate, you have to get different versions, including from the opposite side, from the adversary side in a conflict situation. Verify your information, including from the government, and collect information from multiple sources, not just one source. So, all these are basically what we have, the rules that we have. And these are all ways to get as close to the truth as possible. In other words, this is what is meant by being objective. Many people understand objective to be the same as neutral, but you can still take sides. You can take sides and still be objective, right? And these are all pathways to that. Then, of course, the other commitment to your viewers and readers is that you don't spread information, at least not knowingly. You have to know the difference between propaganda and real news. I could go on, right? And these are, of course, all the rules that you follow in the normal course of journalism. Now, in a conflict situation, there is that element of national security. So, and this comes. I mean, this is laid out naturally. I mean, it almost happens automatically. I think when the government, you know, restricts you. So, and you already know that you're not supposed to give out troop movement. Those are things that you know already. But beyond all this, what what happens is that, I mean, these rules in any conflict, these rules are the first casualty anyway, especially in conflicts that involve your own country versus another. And in India, we have seen this loss of objectivity even when the government battles sections of its own citizens, say in Kashmir or in the Northeast or in the Maoist insurgency hit states. And journalists become, and willingly they offer themselves, it seems to me, as instruments through which the government wants to keep national morale up, even even probably to boost troop morale. And they just drop the commitment to informing the public at that point. And loyalty to the nation is, is demanded by the government. But the danger here is that it also can become loyalty to those in power, and that
Right,
is a real problem.
right. Pratik, so social media seems to have muddied the waters with regard to the information that people access. Can you talk to us a bit about how Operation Sindoor played out on social media and alt news's role in debunking misinformation during this time?
So these days, firstly, they're different, depend on what age group you are, it'll depend where you're accessing information from. The younger ones definitely almost exclusively access information, even news related information from social media. And that is what their source of news has become. And which is why we also see an increased investment by media organizations in the space of digital, where they are, trying to get their Instagram accounts, look like some things that the young people could access. YouTube has a particular demographic, and then you create your content according to the YouTube demographic, and so on and so forth. So these days, how people, the number of forms in which people can access information is many. There are many ways of accessing information now. In this space, it is not that social media and mainstream media can be sort of spoken about completely differently. What I have seen over the last few years is that misinformation is largely strategized. It does not happen by mistake, accidentally, etc. Yeah, there may be some amounts of misinformation there that may happen, unknowingly by someone, but most of the misinformation, most of the propaganda is fairly strategized, and it is strategized across multiple layers. It is not just social media. It is the strategy is across what is the mainstream media going to say, what is the social media, what are so quote unquote influencers on social media, what are they going to say, what are the party workers going to say. So there is a quite a sophisticated and coordinated sort of communication strategy now. So in the last few days, what we saw was, firstly, on day one, and the communication strategy also depends on who needs to set the narrative. So on day one, when the strikes happened, um, we went and struck 8 to 9 alleged military. Sorry, we went and struck 8 to 9 alleged terror camps in Pakistan. And this time, as opposed to Balakot, what was different this time was that before we woke up in the morning, there were already videos from Pakistan about people being injured. There were already videos of broken buildings. There were all kinds of video material that was coming out, which in Balakot there was none. Despite the claim that 300 people had been killed in Balakot, not one image of an injured body or a dead body ever came out of Balakot, and no footage of any building damage came from Balakot. So this time it was Pakistan which sort of got into the race of narrative building first, because it's they who felt the need to set a narrative. So that is when all sorts of claims came out that 6 planes have been down. There were pictures of plane crashes, which actually were even circulated during Balakot and were again circulated. Old plane crashes, routine sortie plane crashes. They were being shown that, look, we have brought down Indian planes, all of that. I think there was one AI generated image as well, where a helicopter was taking an Indian plane, that kind of AI generated image. So day one, and this was when I think Zubair was up all night and debunking all kinds of misinformation that was coming from the Pakistan side. Day two, things started to change, and this is where I say that at least in India, I'm quite aware that when propaganda happens, it is not just social media, not just mainstream media. If mainstream media is saying that, and which many of the mainstream media channels did say that we have attacked the Karachi port. Someone saying that we have reached Islamabad. then social media will amplify that to another level. That, oh, not only have we reached Karachi port, we have gone far inside Karachi. That kind of a thing. So by day three, it was just crazy amount of misinformation on Indian social media and Indian mainstream media. And here I would like to say one thing at at the top of the podcast, that I entered journalism pretty late. Like, I have 8 years of journalism experience. But in these 8 years, there has been Balakot and there has been now Operation Sindoor. And what I have learned is that almost all war propaganda is directed at your own citizens. It is not, despite all the claims that, oh, this is information warfare, etc. That is the claim that is being made on social media in support of all the ludicrous amounts of misinformation that has been passed out. Many people, including some anchors, are saying that whatever was done was in benefit of the nation, and that we were doing an information warfare, and this is an integral part of any kind of war. Now, the point that I would like to make here is that, number one, most of the Indian channels were blocked in Pakistan, and most of the Pakistani channels were blocked in India. So, if someone is saying, that we are destroyed Karachi port on an Indian channel, no one in Karachi is watching it, and people in Karachi are sleeping peacefully at
Right.
that point in time. It is only
Mm.
people in India who are watching this and reacting to this. So all of this propaganda that we saw was not actually an information warfare against another country. It ended up being an information warfare
Mm.
against our own citizens.
So, Nirupma, taking off from what Pratik said, there were really incredible claims during this time on national media networks. And, the way in which reporting is happening on TV, the way in which they are reporting on conflict, it's almost as though they are present at the scene, right? Lots of dramatics happening. So what are the pressures for journalists these days?
Mandira, I mean, these are actually, this should be the best time for journalists, for journalism, but unfortunately, this is also the worst time for journalism. You did mention television, I think, how there was some, all these dramatic things happening, how reporters were acting out stuff on TV and all that. There was some really horrible, cringe stuff that you got to see on TV in those days. So, some of the pressures on journalists are, of course, organizational, meaning the pressure on you to get TRPs. And over the years, TV channels have discovered that demonizing Islam and Muslims is something that gets the channel very good TRPs. They've just specialized in this. So, military conflict with Pakistan is like halwa for for these TV channels. It's an extension of that, of the demonization that is already happening in on TV channels. So, and therefore, there's this extreme kind of what shall I say? They were I don't think the TV channels were unable the TV channels were unable to present the horrors of war as such. Meaning, for instance, I would have liked to know what is it actually, what actually happens in a nuclear conflict. What if this thing were to escalate to a nuclear conflict? The way people in India and no doubt in Pakistan too talk about nuclear weapons. It's completely, it's as if they're playing with firecrackers. People do not understand that these are weapons of mass destruction. I've heard people, even very educated people, say that you know we should just we should just escalate this conflict and we should call the nuclear buff. What will happen? What's the worst that can happen? One of our cities will get destroyed, 5,000 people will die. In return, we'll finish off many of their cities, many more will die on the other side. So, this is the kind of conversation. And I don't think, during a conflict of this kind, I saw nothing on TV that could explain to me what is the nuclear threshold. What do all these terms mean? What does escalation mean? What does threshold mean? What is deterrence? what will happen if there's a nuclear conflagration, and also to bring home the horrors of war. So what was happening is they were all intent on presenting this conflict as some kind of entertainment in the skies. Okay, there were no soldiers involved. There were not even any after the first day. There were not even any planes involved. So there were just these drones coming up, and they were being fended off. So it was all being presented as some kind of entertainment that is happening somewhere else, and people were, I think, happy to watch this entertainment also, this war presented as entertainment in their living rooms, because they felt that it didn't affect them. And I didn't see also any story on how if it escalates, it will affect everybody in the country, not just because it will be nuclear, but even if it's not nuclear, the economy will go for a six. What does, for instance, one day of war cost a country like India? I didn't see anything like this. So, we didn't have these things because they don't get TRPs, right? So that is what it is. And then the other thing, the other pressure is, of course, external. As I mentioned, loyalty. Loyalty is being demanded by the government by the use of punitive measures, filing cases, shutting down news organizations, online news organization, and of course, for the mainstream, is that old threat on the all important advertisement revenue. So journalists are getting the message that they should not even try to find out what is happening on the other side. What we tell you, what the government tells you, is enough. Now, even though, I mean, this is very sad that even though what is going on in Pakistan today is important to understand, what what is happening with your adversary, what's happening there, what are people thinking, all this is important to understand even during a conflict. It is important to keep your viewers and readers informed about all this. But I'm getting to know that this is not allowed. I mean, there were to be consequences if people interviewed people across the border, or just had some contact with people across the border. There would be consequences. So this is what it is, and the other thing I want to say is, this also depends on the power differential in a military conflict. uh, it also depends on the power differential. So with China, you saw during both the Doklam crisis and in Ladakh in 2020, media was very restrained, very well behaved. With Pakistan, it's open season because of that power differential with Pakistan, or what we believe to be a power differential, and as I said, it also gets you TRPs.
Nirupama, so, the media's role, the normative role is to ask questions to power. And we saw also the Hindu too was targeted on social media for asking a question about India's losses during Operation Sindoor during an official press conference. But doesn't the public have the right to know? And what are we hoping to achieve by controlling information?
I mentioned loyalty earlier, and I think
Hmm.
there's an expectation that in these kind of situations, in conflict situations, journalists must suspend their questioning of the government. Journalists must stop doing this, because now all that matters is that you have to boost the war effort. So that is a dangerous part here, that so actually this could loyalty to the nation often becomes that you can't question the government of the day. And even citizens who in the normal course we think that they want to know more, and that they are eager to be informed. They also think that journalists must stop questioning the government, and they seem to be unaware that these questions have to be asked on their behalf only, that journalists are asking these questions on behalf of of citizens. I mean, and let me say that this is not a problem just in this conflict. You have seen this for the last 10, 12 years, that people who question the government are getting pushed back all the time. They're getting trolled. They're getting, I mean, there's toxic language being used against them. They're called, journalists are called now by a pejorative that was popularized by this government, by a member of this government. So, so citizens themselves want journalists to not question the government, and governments themselves are only going to give out information that is favorable to them. And also, again, this is not just the case in war. It's always that. And okay, at some level you can decide what to give out, because governments will justify this as something to do with troop morale. Okay, that's quite correct. I mean, I can imagine that for a soldier, hearing about losses, when he's in the middle of war, can be very crushing. But if that is the case, then why is the government still not coming out with this information about what losses we had? Because there was an indirect admission by one of the officials who briefed the press that in combat losses are
Yeah,
normal.
losses happen. That was in
Losses.
response to the Hindu's
But
question, where
but
he
exactly. But they still haven't told us. They are ready to tell us what Pakistan lost, but they don't want to tell us, what happened to that, the reported losses that India suffered. I mean, let alone Pakistan, we don't know even the full extent of what we lost when China made incursions into Indian territory in 2020, and if we have got it all back in the recent engagement. Because if they make this public, then questions will be asked of the government will be made accountable, and then that may have an impact on the politics of the country. They may, I mean, and the elections and so on and so forth. So this is why they have ensured that, they want to control the information, and they are kind of criminalizing almost anybody who takes a different course. I mean, if somebody puts out something else that doesn't conform to what the government is saying, then they are punished immediately. And but I think, Mandira, what we really need is a citizenry that is informed about the role of the media, what the media has to do, that demands to know more, and that presses its journalists to ask more questions of the government, not not a citizenry that actually criticizes journalists for asking those questions, and showers invectives and abuse on them, or people who are just happy to be entertained by anchors who are actually degrading journalism and the role of journalists. So this is what I have to say about this, and that is what they want to do by controlling this information.
So if information is controlled so much, I mean, we saw also, they had asked social media platform X to block access to about 8,000 accounts, and a number of, news websites and or international news websites and UX users were sort of blocked, right? So if people don't have access to information from all sides, how are they supposed to actually understand any issue? I'd like both of you to please comment on this.
We cannot. The simple answer is that we cannot, and the reason for blocking is precisely that we get only a selective view of the information world. That and this has been, again, as Nirupama pointed out, this has been in making for a very, very long time. It's just that during the last few days we saw an extreme version of it. For a very long time, accounts are being blocked. So, for example, Hindutva Watch, which does very critical work in documenting hate crimes and hate speech, has been blocked in India for the longest time. So it is not that we are seeing the first time that things are being blocked. For the longest time, the government has tried that we only get sanitized information. And this time they took it to the extent that they started blocking Indian journalists like Anuradha Bhasin. And they have blocked people like Arpit Sharma, who's on Twitter, who's talking about politics, young person who's talking about politics, is expressing views about politics, makes some satire videos. He got blocked. I mean, I'm not even talking about information from Pakistan or China or things like that. Indian citizens were blocked. Indian citizens were withheld. Their accounts were within India. So they are blocking Indian citizens. I mean, what can be crazier than that? That so many Indian citizens got blocked. We can't hear our fellow citizens because they are being claimed to be speaking in support of of Pakistan. I mean, we have taken censorship to a different level altogether. Maktub media got blocked. So anyone who's being critical, it is very very convenient. See, wartime makes it a time of conflict makes it very convenient under the garb of nationalism. Anyone who's critical, you say that they are being anti-national, and you withheld their accounts. And this happened with so many people. So where do you get all round information from? Nowhere. We are in a time of crisis. The Indian media is in a time of crisis like none other. And when I'm talking about Indian media, I'm talking about the ecosystem, which includes social media, which includes YouTube, which includes this, that. Our information sources are now highly restricted, highly polarized, and the way people are being informed is very, very dangerous. It is not, if you look at the way our foreign secretary got trolled and the kind of comments that were made, it depicts what we have become, as what the society has become. And it is not, at one point of time we would say that, oh, this is a Twitter phenomenon. No, this is no longer a Twitter slash X phenomenon. We see this in daily lives where fruit vendors or vegetable vendors Aadhaar card is being checked post Pahalgam to see, oh, whether they are Muslim or not. So the hate has seeped so deep, and on top of that, there is no access to any well-rounded information. So I really feel that all of us, at least organizations or people who know better, it is high time that we get together and start talking about these issues in as loudly as we can.
Yeah, I think the idea is precisely that, to deny people information, to deny people an all-round understanding. So this particular conflict that we saw, it was basically, the way I picturize it, because I was also watching TV at that time. The way I picturize this is that it's drones coming from Pakistan and terrorizing people in Jammu and all that, and then misinformation being directed from wherever, IT cell, or from within some wing of government, or because this is as Pratik mentioned earlier, there's a deliberate information war. But this was all being directed at the country's own citizens. So from both sides, this terror from Pakistan in the form of drones flying all over Jammu and all those western areas, northwestern areas, and this misinformation hitting people all the time. It's unimaginable. And of course, the idea is that you keep the people in the dark. You prevent a full understanding. And to imagine that by blocking people on X, you also sort of block out the news completely, is also not it's absurd also, in a sense, because yeah, you block out some actors, but people, the fact that India had suffered some losses was in every respectable news organization across the world. There was no way that the government could control all that. So there's also a limit to which the government can control the narrative. It can't control it entirely. And the other thing is, I mean, if you look at the kind of people that they blocked on X, I'm talking now about the Pakistani side, it showed that they were not even applying their minds. So it was just a blanket ban, 8,000 accounts, which is what came out from X itself. But if you looked at some of the handles that were blocked, and if you looked at some of the handles that were actually free to do their thing, then I mean, you realize that hey, nobody has actually studied this properly. Nobody, the person who has passed this order does not even know who's putting out what tweet on X, because many of the people who are blocked are very very normal. I mean, they are not carrying out any misinformation. They are, they are, in fact, many of them are dissidents in their own country. I mean, I just found it at some point nonsensical. And this whole idea of course, keeping your own citizens in the dark was somehow very ominous. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I don't know. It just it seems really. I feel really sad actually to be having this conversation because, Pratik was talking about a 14-year-old who is on social media and has no other source of information because they don't read the newspaper, they don't sort of engage with the news in any other way. So I'm just sort of wondering where do we go from here? But I think that's a conversation for another day. Thank you both for joining us.